Yeah, there we go.
Usually when I'm podcasting,
I
I just start recording as soon as I open Zoom. But because you're not on my show, we don't have that relationship. I wanted to make sure you were here.
I mean, it's all good. That is just like especially from doing the podcast now for like a year or whatever. That's like my fear of just like, did we hit record? Did I fuck it up?
Yeah, I've done that like once, and got it. I'll have to send you an audio file sometime. I have one podcast that was like every calamity that could happen.
Oh no.
And it was a long form interview with a guy I really respect. And it was like, there was some kind of weird technical thing where we lost like a quarter of a second every 3 minutes. And so eventually I was asking him stuff, and it was like, he was answering the question before I asked it, like in the audio. Like my channel was losing stuff, but not his or something. And then also my sister-in-law had made me a couple of drinks that were much stronger than I thought. And so about an hour into this 2-hour interview, suddenly it's like, you can hear me audibly slurring.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, oh man, there's nothing good about any of this.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, to answer your question, I think I first discovered that it was a movie. Like, I was dimly aware of the cartoons, because my sisters and I were big Hanna-Barbera fans growing up. And so I knew that they existed, and I had seen stray episodes, but it was 90s syndicated TV, so you'd be like,
or something.
Yeah, where you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, there's a group of girls that dress like cats and play music. That's kind of cool, but you would only catch like stray minutes here and there. Mm-hmm. And then I think we didn't see it in theaters. We saw it on VHS, but I remember one of them renting it at Director's Chair Video in Tucson, Arizona. I think it was my middle sister, and she was just like, hey, look, it's that thing that we saw the other day about like, cat girls that are in a band. And I was like, really? This is the thing? Why aren't they in the yellow jumpsuits?
Yeah.
So my initial kind of reaction was just like, this doesn't look like the thing, even though I didn't even really know what the thing was.
Yeah.
And then once we started watching it, it's one of those, you know how you have those experiences with movies where there's the first movie that you see that's bad, and you're like, oh, movies can be bad.
Yeah.
And this was kind of the reverse, where it was like the first movie I remember really being like just blown away that it was so much better, like so much more complex and thoughtful than it had any right to be.
Yeah.
And, I think I was probably like 12 or 13 maybe when we saw it the first time. I kind of don't remember now. It's so dimly recollected. Yeah. But at that point, I remember just having this sensation of just like, this is like so much cooler than I had any idea that it was going to be. Mm. And it still kind of went over my head. Like some of the, corporate stuff, I didn't really get. I didn't get the like du jour going in the back door jokes, like any of that stuff. But I could tell from context clues that there was stuff happening that I wasn't getting. And that was really interesting to me because most of the time shit was just like, beneath me.
Yeah.
Where it felt above me, which I was just like, what? This is so cool. Like I could feel that there was a momentum narratively happening that I wasn't fully in control
of. When did you become kind of aware that this movie was not like a hit? Like, because I think that like that's one of those weird conversations that young people tended to have is like, you suck because you like things that aren't successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I honestly, it wasn't until much later because it became like a recurring movie that we would rent all the time. Like we had like these little staples, these little pockets of movies that we would just be like, all right, and now we're going to rent the Disney Shipwreck movie again. And now we're going to rent Raiders of the Lost Ark again. And this became one of those movies that was in that rotation. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I didn't really have any sense that it wasn't a success because I didn't have anybody to talk with it about because nobody that I knew really interacted with it. Like it was kind of like the movie that my sisters and I loved. And every time we would talk about it to somebody, they'd be like, what? Like, like the cartoon? You like the cartoon? Like, no, the live action movie. Oh, all right.
That's my video store.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm a giant nerd, I have a painting of the video store I used to run on the wall.
Oh man, R.I.P. R.I.P. the video store. Yeah, the store that we went to growing up was called Director's Chair, and it was like the place, that place, and then the first comic book store that I shopped at. They were like these temples of narrative where you would go, and you would learn, and like I had such an affinity for the people who worked there. Like I can't even remember some of their names, like Dakota. Yeah. Dakota was like the guy that I would always go shoot the shit with, and like, you know, he was at the time probably like a mid-20s, early 30s, you know, kind of slackery Gen X dude, and that was like just dropped right out of a Kevin Smith movie. But at the time, you know, I was like, whatever, a kid, so I was just like, you're the coolest fucking dude. Like, I can't believe you have a job where you just get to talk about movies all the time.
Yeah.
Wow.
I totally get that, because there's a guy who's a local like stand-up and DJ here in Syracuse, but I know him from when I was like 11 or 12, and he was not only the guy who worked at the comic shop, but like specifically they had big ass murals all over the walls, and he was the one who would draw all the superheroes and shit on the walls.
Right. Yeah.
And so from when I was like 12 or 13, I still have somewhere buried in my archives of nonsense like a 9x12 sketch he did for my birthday of like the Joker handing Batman an exploding present.
I love it. Yeah, it was pretty depressing when Blockbuster opened up literally across the street from my video store and just like crushed them. Did you see that documentary about the last Blockbuster? So I'm friendly with the dude who actually made that. Actually, he directed this short that I wrote, which was a really weird experience, because I wrote it as a joke for Falk Henschel, who played Hawkman on Legends of Tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And then they did some like rewriting on it so that when it came back to me and I got to see the first run of dailies, it was like, oh shit, they brought in the lady who played Hawkgirl on that show to like be his co-star, whereas mine was just a dude on the phone. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I saw the documentary, and I was kind of, it was interesting to me to see people be so nostalgic for the corporate juggernaut that fucked everybody. Yeah. And they kind of touch on it, where you can tell that certain people in the documentary aren't talking about Blockbuster. They're talking about the video store experience, period. Yeah. But the way it's edited and framed, it seems like they're talking about Blockbuster. Yeah. Well, the thing that I was kind of bringing up was the idea that they were originally Pacific Video or whatever it was, and that Blockbuster basically came in and was like, hey, this is a great location. Do you want to be a Blockbuster, or do you want us to open up across the street and ruin you? So that was like literally a thing that they did. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting. I don't know. I have a somewhat complex relationship with that, because I don't necessarily yearn for the experience of going to a video store in the way that seems like some of my age group peers do. Yeah. I'm perfectly content fucking, renting weird bullshit on streaming platforms or whatever. I especially because I feel like a lot of people that yearn for that experience aren't, almost kind of saying it's autodidactic is the wrong term, but like they're not somebody who's like a forager and they find weird stuff themselves, so they want somebody to give that to them. And I liked the social component of going into a space and talking with people, but my interests are so strange that like no algorithm that Netflix is ever going to have is going to suggest like the new Barbarians to me or some shit. Yeah. I'm not quite as offbeat as your sensibilities, but I have the same basic thing where my tastes are just weird. And so it's like algorithms don't help me, because there's never in a million years going to be an algorithm that says, hey dude, you should check out Zero Effect, Right. So, steering back, because I've just looked at the clock. When did you start to find out about the kind of internet fandom that had cropped up around Josie, and the way that it became like a cult classic all of a sudden? Yeah, I was kind of in the same way that I was aware of the franchise existing before we've like really locked into the movie, I was aware that there were other people out there, but I had no idea how to access them. And it wasn't until much later that I discovered that there were like literally forums dedicated to it and like people who were obsessed with it. And when I found that out, it was almost kind of a sad thing for me because I was just like, oh man, I would have totally hung out and sure. But you know, it wasn't until much later, like within the last, I don't know, 6 years, 5 years, something like that, that I learned that side of the internet existed. Cause I was a part of some weird movie message boards and stuff during that time period, but it was all like grubby neckbeard guys talking about Werner Herzog or whatever. Like it wasn't, cause I think the thing that kind of hurts Josie and the Pussycats is it's so smart and so intellectual on one level, and yet it is the commercial thing that it's making fun of, which is why it's so good, but that also almost kind of precludes it from being accepted by the people who would naturally really like it. Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, it does. It's a thing that I talked to the directors a little bit about because I think the most extreme manifestation of that is people like Roger Ebert who like complain about the product placement in their reviews because it's just like, okay, so the joke was so prevalent that the thing that's impossible not to get, he didn't get.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think about the idea that, cause this is a thing that's cropped up a little bit too, that because cult classics are so gendered, a movie like this takes a really long time to kind of get that acceptance and to have people talk about it that way?
Yeah, 100%. I think, I mean, it kind of just goes back to what I literally just said about like, it wasn't even in that conversation because A, it had female protagonists and B, the movie is in air quotes perceived as being aimed at girls.
Right.
So it's just like, it's even if it was something that ticked all the boxes to be a cult classic in the way that Evil Dead or Deadly Spawn or Deadly Prey or any of these kind of like schlocky lower budget cult movies have gained this, again, very predominantly male, very, you know, kind of bin crawler, personality, which I definitely am. But I think I'm also a little bit of a weird Venn diagram in that I like a ton of, like I write romance comics, you know, like I like, you know, like my favorite comic ever is like Wet Moon, which is about like sad girls in art school. Like, and I don't think that Venn diagram necessarily is as commonplace necessarily. Not to say that I'm some sort of unique snowflower because I'm
right. But I get like what you're saying.
Yeah.
And like again,
the culture around cult movies is so, it's a guy in a heavy metal t-shirt with a beard and tattoos.
Yeah. I'm like 12% more mainstream than you, but have the same, like my favorite comic of all time is Strangers in Paradise.
See, Strangers in Paradise is Wet Moon, but like successful.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly. So the last thing I'll ask, and this is the last thing that I ask everybody, if Universal was like, okay, fuck it, we're coming back and we're going to do something in this universe, what would be kind of the platonic ideal of like, what would you want to see them do with this kind of version of these characters?
I mean, well, one, they're doing a new show, right? Maybe?
Robot Chicken is doing a special that has Du Jour in it.
Okay.
But it's just like literally they're like a 2-minute sketch.
It's a 2-minute thing. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting because like the version that would get made is like Rosario Dawson and Rachel Lee Cook and everybody come back and they teach the next generation of, Josie and the Pussycats 2, and then they go on a new adventure, and this time it's a metatextual commentary on like how franchises can't be left dead and blah, blah, blah. Like that's the version that would get made.
Mm-hmm.
Do I need that in my life? I don't know. I mean, if anything, I would love like a VH1 behind the music style documentary that is like making fun of those overly produced Martin Scorsese, music docs, but about the making of the Josie and the Pussycats movie, but doing it like in the same way of like critiquing how these documentaries can only be made if there's all these massive celebrities and it's all this product placement and blah, 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 blah. Like that's what would interest me is like doing something really weird and left of center, but it won't be that. if there ever was a thing, which there probably won't, it would just be, we're going to make another Josie thing.
Yeah. The one thing that came closest to actually being a reality, and you probably have heard me talk about this on Twitter, but a couple of years ago, Harry and Deb and Seth and Brecken went to Netflix with a Du Jour spinoff.
I would watch the fuck out of that.
Yeah, the idea was going to be like, just like New Kids on the Block had just gotten back together, and it's like it's the reunion, and it's like showing these guys trying to get along again, and we know that they don't get along from the movie, blah 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 blah. But they pitched it to Netflix, and it was like the Monday after the weekend that Popstar Never Stop Never Stopping had come out.
Oh no.
And so they were like, yeah, we got there, we started talking, and about 40 seconds in, we just saw the light go out in everybody's eyes.
Oh no, that's so unfortunate.
Yeah. All right. Well, I should go and talk to Jeff Smith.
Yeah, I agree. You should.
I'll drop you a line if there's anything else, and I appreciate your taking time out, man. It's a pleasure.
No, yeah. If nothing else, good to finally.
Yeah, good to actually exactly. Yeah. I'll talk to you soon.
Cool. Sounds good.